Welcome to another episode of the Brand Envy podcast. Today's guest is George Swetlitz, co-founder of RightResponse AI. RightResponse AI is a review, response, and sentiment platform that's helping businesses use artificial intelligence to more effectively win customers. Now, what I love about George is that he's not your typical SaaS founder. He scaled a 220 location business, was president at a division at Sara Lee Corporation, and he also holds an MBA from Harvard. So he knows a thing or two about running a successful company. Now he's built software that helps location-based businesses with AI-powered review services without losing the human touch. So this is a tactical conversation with a big upside. I'm so excited to have you. We're going to learn so much from you today. Thank you, George, for being with us.
Thank you, Nicole. It's great to be here.
One of the reasons why I was very excited to chat with you is because I'm like, oh, maybe we can talk shop and convince other people. I'm a big champion. Believe it or not, a lot of companies are massively underutilizing their Google business listing, their Bing business listing. There are so many ways that you can optimize it to attract the right customer to you. And one of the biggest and best benefits of these location listings is that they allow anybody, former, customers, to leave reviews on your business. And I know I do not make any major purchase or do any kind of major decision without consulting, Mr. Google and reading responses. I'm an expert at sorting them by the newest response, the lowest response. I think I literally read it in that order. I mean, do you do the same? Is that are you always checking responses?
Yeah, I mean, everybody checks responses. More people today read reviews than visit websites.
Yep. And
so if you're not bringing your website to your review responses, you're leaving a lot of opportunity on the table.
Totally. I've ran into clients that are like, oh yeah, we work really hard to get reviews and people leave some reviews and we're responding to it, and then when I go check, I see some responses that are like, oh my God, I cannot believe this client said that. And so I speak to my client, I say, Mr. Client, your review was not appropriate. And what I try to educate my clients on is you're not actually responding to that person that you had a negative interaction with. The response that you're leaving is actually for the thousands of customers between now until the end of time who are going to be reading the way that you are responding to that negative review. And therein lies, you've got to really separate that emotional aspect of what really happened with the account. Maybe the person is unhinged. It doesn't matter. You have to measure your response considering other people that don't really know that this person is truly unhinged are going to read it and are going to form opinions about whether or not they want to do business with you based on how you handled that response. But the problem is that when you have multiple locations, it's a challenge for businesses to be providing responses that are on brand. So you came up with this idea, a software. Tell me about that transition, like that realization.
Sure. So as you mentioned, I was the CEO of a roll-up of audiology clinics. We built the business to about 220 locations. Wow. And so in that process, we struggled with all these issues. How do you leverage reviews? How do you get them? How do you analyze them? How do you respond to them at scale? And scale can be different things to different people. If you're an owner of a 15 location business, that's scale. Right. You only have so many resources and 15's a lot. But that same problem gets more complicated as you get bigger. And we had that problem and we never really were able to solve it. The technology at the time didn't really do it in the way that we were looking for. And very expensive. The tools that are out there are just phenomenally expensive. And when you have 220 locations and you take 220 times, $200 a month, you're talking $40,000 a month. It's just not. It was not something that we could do.
were you outsourcing review, reading and responding to those reviews, or did you have like a full-time, because I imagine it's a full-time job, a full-time person.
Well, so we had 220 locations. We had people running those locations. Some of
Okay.
them enjoyed doing that and they would do it themselves. Some of them didn't and they wouldn't. And so we then had to step in as corporate and do that. And how do you do that? Well, we had a contact center. So when the contact center wasn't busy talking to people, they would open their computers and respond to reviews. But they would use templates and they would make things up and it wouldn't sound like an owner. It was difficult to
Yes.
scale that. And that was the problem.
Yeah.
And so what happened was we ended up exiting the business. I was sitting at home and ChatGPT came out. And I started thinking, this technology, this disruptive technology, maybe we can apply this to this problem. And so it just so happened that 15 years ago, when I was a consultant, I built a technology team in India. And that team kind of worked with me wherever I went. And so I called them up and said, do you want to tackle this? Do you want to start a company and tackle this problem? And so we decided to do that. And that's the origin story. Essentially building the tool that we wish we would have had when we were all at this company.
That is amazing. Okay, so first of all, is this like just one of those is it an organization, a company in India that does that has a bunch of software engineers or
Yeah, exactly. We had started 15 years ago a small software development company. And so when I would, technology is such an software enablement is so important in any organization. And so whether I was acting on a consulting basis or in a company, I would leverage that team that I built in India wherever I was.
got it.
And so when I went to this business called Alpaca, the audiology business, they came with us and enabled technology at Alpaca. And
Wow.
now we're working together to build this technology, this AI from the ground up technology focused on that review ecosystem.
So how did you direct your team? Because we all know what ChatGPT is and you can use it for a million thousand things. We all know its flaws. So how did you turn around to the team and say, code it like this so it doesn't mess up? Because I love ChatGPT, but by God, it messes up. And, so how was that?
Well, it was a real learning experience. It was an iterative process. Uh, we didn't know what to do and how to handle ChatGPT and the other large language models that are out there. And we just had to learn through experience over time. And I think one of the things that we learned was that the more you try to do it one time, the higher the probability your effort will fail. And so we've gone in the other direction.
Say
We
that again.
do,
Say that again, and
well,
because that sounded profoundly like deep and important, but that it just kind of like. So give me
the
an
more,
example. I'm an example
yeah,
person.
the more you try to do it one go, when you're working on something and you try to get it to write a big article,
Hmm.
it just, it'll just give you the worst output. But if you say, help me
Towards
develop
the
this
end, it
one
gets bad.
paragraph, yeah, it gets worse over time.
Yeah,
But if you say, I really want to work on this one paragraph,
that's right.
it's really good.
Yes.
So the smaller the ask,
Hmm.
the better the answer.
Yeah, and
And
you have to
so,
drive it. You have to kind of like I think I feel like I'm constantly like bracketing into, to drive it, So sometimes I've been like, when I write something, a really good paragraph with AI, do I own it, or is it wrong because AI helped me so much? And when I sit back and I think for myself, I go, I drove the truck. If somebody else tried to compose this paragraph by asking a prompt, it would not be the same output. Therefore, I really believe that even though AI helped me structure the sentence to be more clear, it's still, I'm the driver. I drove it there.
Right. No, absolutely. And, and I think that's, what you just hit on is, is our differentiation. So essentially people talk about how, and I hear this from people about how AI is dehumanizing interaction and how it's stripping personalization out of interactions. And what we've done is essentially the opposite. We create an environment where business owners can put information about their brand in our system. And what the AI does, which it's great at, is it identifies when that information is relevant. And when it's relevant, it incorporates it into the response.
Is it like an emotion? Is it positive, negative sentiment? What qualifies as relevant?
I'll give you an example. So thinking about our business, if somebody wrote a review and that review said, I had a hard time finding parking, there was no parking, and I had a hard time walking to the building.
Mm-hmm.
Well, most people who wear hearing aids are older. And so if they read that review, they would say, I'm not going to go there. I won't be able to get to the building. It's too long to walk.
Mm-hmm.
But if we were able to put into the system, if somebody talks about the fact that they couldn't find parking, remind them that there's entrance to the building. The parking lot for the building is behind off of Beach Street. Mm. And we have accessible parking and 45 spots. So the AI recognizes that that's relevant, incorporates that information, and essentially personalizes that response. The response isn't just saying, oh, I'm sorry you had difficult finding parking. The response says, I'm sorry you had difficult finding parking, but next time, go off of Beach Street, plenty of parking there. And so it allows you to extend. It allows you to say to customers what you would say to them if they called you and picked up the phone. Mm-hmm. Right? But nobody does that anymore.
Well, I think it empowers a C-suite minded person to program and train and state like, that response chain of reaction, like what to you is common sense that you tried the call center team to do, but they just couldn't, they would kind of go rogue and they would forget, or that human error you're really training and programming. So do you have like an accuracy rate that you reached before you said, I'm ready to take this to market? And what I mean by that is, do you understand what I mean by that?
I do what you're. Okay. So again, and that's where it gets back to the smaller the scope that you're asking AI, the better. Mm-hmm. So essentially, if we're talking about the relevance of a statement, we would look at that and say, we want that to hit 95% of the time. At the end of the day, AI doesn't know anything. It's just about the probability of words next to each other. That's all it is. Yeah. And so it will never be 100% repeatable, ever, because the probabilities shift. And so you can't look for perfection. You can only look for kind of a high level of getting it right.
Right.
And so, out of 10 times that something comes up with parking, it might find that relevant 9 times. It'll miss it once, but not the end of the world.
Yeah.
And so that's the nice thing about the review ecosystem, is that it's not medicine, right? You're not trying to find a problem in somebody's body. You're trying to make a better review response. You're trying to make a better review request. You're trying to understand thousands of reviews better.
Yeah.
But it'll never be 100%. So, for example, we do sentiment analysis. So the reviews come in, we analyze them. We try to do a lot of sophisticated things. So, for example, reviews are crazy things. I went to McDonald's down the street. The burgers were terrible, so I went to Burger King. And at Burger King, I loved the fries, but I hated the drinks. There's so many things that are happening in a review.
I've read reviews that are like an essay, and I'm like, I don't even know where to start.
Yeah. And so we break the review down. We look at every phrase. We say, is that phrase about the business? Is it positive? Is it negative? What topic? We do all of these things in tiny, tiny chunks. But if you ran it through 10 times, would you get the same exact sentiments? No. But over a large enough set of reviews, you're going to get a really clear idea of what people are saying about your business.
Very cool. So you bubble up is there any kind of reporting built into it where you bubble up sentiment or something kind of like, this, you had this many positive reviews, this many negatives. How does your software work?
Yeah,
How did you
100%.
build it to work?
Yeah. So in the area of sentiment analysis, there are lots of dashboards and you can drill down. It's really kind of neat what you can do. You can go in and you can see all the topics and the percent positive and negative for each topic. You can click on the bar and then you can read what all of those phrases were. And then you can click on a phrase and you can read the review that it was in. It really allows you to understand how people are experiencing your business. And even more, if you want to, you can do that same thing to your competitors.
Oh, so in your software, I can enter my competitors and get a report of the sentiment?
100%.
That's fantastic.
You can analyze your competitors using the same scorecard that you analyze yourself. Incredibly powerful.
I like that. All right. So you are the man that has obviously studied and dissected the anatomy of the perfect response. So what is the anatomy of an ideal response to any review, positive or negative?
I think that the most important thing about responses, and actually it goes back to what you said before, that you don't write the response for the reviewer, you write it for all the prospective customers that are bottom of the funnel, trying to decide who they're going to call next. Mm-hmm. That's who you're writing it for. And if you put yourself in their shoes, the most important thing about that response is that it's helpful and informative. If you can do those two things, you will connect with those prospective customers. If they read a review, positive, negative, and you're not participating in the conversation by having a helpful and informative response, you lower the probability that you'll connect with that customer. But if that customer reads the response and says, wow, I now understand more about that business because I read the response, they're going to say that business cares. I might give them a shot next.
How do you, as a human, I have sometimes difficulty figuring out how I'm going to be helpful when someone's really upset about something that kind of, hey, I went to this whatever and to the store and the receptionists were rude and didn't, and dismissed me and told me to wait. And then they never came back. And I'm just really upset. How can I, as a human responder, and even less a computer, be helpful in crazy situations like that, where it's kind of like, sorry, you had a bad experience,
Yeah. I look at negative reviews. I kind of put them in two buckets. One are negative reviews where you really can't help them. Like the examples, they just had a bad experience and I can't do anything about that. And so you just want to be empathetic, offer to speak with them personally. So for example, in our system, if it's a negative review and we assess that a conversation might be warranted, then it automatically will put contact information in and ask the person to contact the business.
Got it.
But there are other types of negative reviews where you can. The example about the parking, or if it's a restaurant and somebody complains about, we went there and it was noisy and we didn't expect it to be so noisy. We didn't expect there to be a band. Well, we can tell them where the schedule for the bands are. So next time they can check before they come.
Gotcha.
Or if somebody came for a walk-in appointment and had to wait, we can say, well, next time before you come, call this number and we'll tell you if there's a line or we can make an appointment for you. So there's different kinds of negative reviews and we treat them differently.
What does the software do when when it's coming across a scenario that never programmed it for? There was no, does it kind of bubble up stuff that it can't deal with, or does it just automatically give a response?
When there's no other information, it's programmed to kind of reflect back at a high level,
Okay.
right? So, the typical AI responder, if someone says, "Oh, I didn't like the burger," it'll say, "Oh, I'm sorry, you didn't like the burger," right? It'll just parrot back what's in the review. And so that's not always, it's kind of like a dead giveaway.
Yeah.
And so we program our system to operate at a slightly higher level. So if somebody just says something where you don't have a fact that can influence it, it responds by saying, "We're sorry you didn't enjoy your experience with us." Right? Because that's kind of what you would
Yeah,
say to the
that's very high
person.
level.
It's very high level. It's not
Yeah.
getting into the weeds,
Right.
but it's
So it
it's
can't be
kind of,
wrong.
it can't be wrong.
Yeah.
And it's kind of what you would say if they were in front of you.
Yeah.
"Hey, I'm sorry. Is there anything we could do,
Yeah.
to get you back?"
Yeah. You don't know how much copy I read, and I'm like, nope, nope, that can backfire. It's too granular. Like, let's come up and use a more like a broader umbrella term where, because we don't really know what's going on. How did you get ChatGPT to talk to these response, like, so I'm imagining you're doing, Google, my business, Bing. How did you get them to kind of connect and you know respond on behalf of a human inside of that platform?
Yeah. So for example, Google has a great API. And
Okay.
so we pull the data from Google and then we push it back to Google. And so it's all within the system. It's all,
Nice.
and people can automate that. So for example, we have a lot of customers that if it's a review without text, right, just a rating, or it's a review with text and it's a 4 or 5 star, they'll just generate the response and push it back into Google. And they'll manually review the ones that are kind of negative reviews that have text, and then they'll publish it. But we integrate over 100 review sources. And so, wherever people have reviews, depending on the industry, they're in different places, we pull them in for Google and, we can push them. But for the others, we generate the response and then the user will copy it back into that platform.
User being the client.
The client, yeah.
Have you guys had any particular experiences with the healthcare industry where HIPAA and acknowledging is a concern?
Yeah, so one of these little agents that we have running around in our software is a PHI agent, a personal health information agent. If you're a medical business, it looks through the review and it identifies words and phrases that should not be in the response. And it ensures that those words and phrases don't go back into the response.
I'm just curious what some of those are, if you happen to know. Sorry to put you on the
Yeah,
spot.
I mean, yeah, no, it's a very complicated thing, HIPAA,
Yeah,
right, in a review, because technically, even writing a response, I mean, at a very technical level, even writing a response is a violation.
Yeah.
Because by writing a response, you're acknowledging they're your patient.
So we
right?
like to use "thank you for your kind words." Right? I mean, thank you for your kind words.
Yeah.
I mean,
But
is
different
that
practices have different levels of tolerance
right?
around that. So we actually have like a lenient and a strict.
Mm.
And the strict is, nothing.
Oh, nothing? Like
Right?
not at all?
Well, I mean, it'll respond, but it won't say anything. It is very strict about what it says back. The lenient one, if somebody says, "Oh, I had an MRI," right?
I had an MRA and everybody was great.
Right. The lenient checker will say, we're happy that you were satisfied with your treatment. right? It
But
won't
wouldn't I
use,
was going
right?
to say, but even your treatment and obviously with us, it's saying it without saying with us, it's so even that. So yes, that's very lenient.
Yeah,
Okay. What, by
that's lenient. That's
contrast,
lenient.
the strict
The
one
strict
would
one
say
wouldn't
what?
say anything about it. The
Wow.
strict one
Nothing.
would just say,
Is there a moderate one?
well, we have two. We have kind of a
Oh,
strict and I mean, even the strict one is responding, right? And, technically you shouldn't respond at all. Or it'd be like, oh, thank you for your 5-star review. That's
mhm.
it,
Yeah.
right? But our strict one will say a little bit more than that, but it won't acknowledge any condition. It won't even generalize a treatment.
Yeah.
The lenient one will generalize a treatment. So, for example, in the hearing aid space, it wouldn't say hearing aids, but it might say your device,
Right.
right? It's not saying it's a hearing aid, but a device. So it's just from our perspective, it's the practice that has to tell us how much risk they're willing to take. But I've never in all my years heard of anyone being penalized for those kinds of responses. Where
Mhm.
people get in trouble is when somebody says something negative and they respond and they're like right at like what we did and what we didn't do, and they're talking about very specific things. That's when people get in trouble.
Mhm.
When the practice says something that the customer didn't say. But
What?
generally, well, so if they, I was very dissatisfied with, the way you handled my case. And the doctor writes back, well, you asked for an ultrasound, but we didn't think it was relevant. And that's why we didn't prescribe, when they say something that the patient didn't say,
Oh, so they're
that's when
disclosing. Yeah,
they're
because they're
disclosing something.
disclosing. Gotcha.
But
Yeah.
if the
Which
patient
honestly, it's
discloses
like you
something,
have to be a moron to write something like that,
exactly,
right?
but
Like,
it happes. It
I'm
happens. They get mad
sure
or
it
whatever it
does.
is.
Yeah, funny stuff. Anyways, all right. So speaking of that, what I find it interesting, just looking at you as a person that created this company, when it comes to establishing value in right response AI, right? Have you struggled in convincing potential new clients that they need to be responding to every single review? Are there still people out there that are like that don't value the response component? It's a double question. I'll finish my question so you can kind of think about, because the way that I'm noticing you that you are branding your company, or the copy on your website, you wrote reviews aren't tasks, they're your conversion engine. So when I read that, I'm a marketer. I'm a different reader. Like, don't my brain does not think the way that normal people think. I'm seeing interesting. He believes that people believe that reviews are just tasks, but he is elevating the value of Right Response AI by calling it a conversion engine and convincing his potential clients that this opportunity leveraged correctly can become a conversion engine for your company and ultimately generate more revenue. So just strategically, as a Harvard MBA, seasoned business owner, share with us your how you know how you're dealing with establishing value in Right Response AI.
I think people get attracted to us because we are at the forefront of leveraging AI in this review ecosystem, whether it's review requests or review responses. We're further along than others. And so people read about that and they come to us because of that.
So you have the
ChatGPT
first
told
mover
me,
advantage, right? The first
yeah,
mover advantage.
ChatGPT told me that if I was looking for AI in reviews, to call you.
Mhm. And I'm sure you optimized for that.
Right. 100%.
Yeah.
What we struggle with is the fact that people are so busy and so pressed for time that they they don't spend the time necessary, not all in some cases, to set the system up to really help them create a conversion engine.
Um, Wait, so your clients have to set the system up and set like the parameters, and you guys probably have them fill out a questionnaire?
No. So for example, these facts, I don't know what the facts are. Like, I don't know that they have parking behind,
Right.
off of Beach Street. I don't know that. So they have to put that in the system. They know what people talk about. So for example, when a customer signs up with us and we download their reviews, we look at the last 1,000 reviews.
Okay, that's a good
And
sample size.
we generate draft facts. So we look at what are people writing about. So in that example, we would say, if people are talking about they can't find parking, we would have a fact. It would just be sitting in our system that says, if somebody says something negative about parking, tell them that there's lots of parking across the street. Now, we don't know where the parking is. The person has to go in and edit that fact to say it's not across the street, it's on the back off of Beach Street. So we do as much as we can, but people know what their business is about. People know the brand values that they're trying to communicate through their website or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes people are attracted by the AI, but they don't want to spend the time to set up the facts so that it can do its job forever.
Well, hopefully they're
Right.
working with an agency like us who, we know their brand DNA, we're helping them, so that's something that they can either delegate to an agency or their marketing person.
That's right. But a lot of people don't. A lot of people aren't working with agents, especially the 1 to 5 location businesses.
I was going to say, like, I would imagine multiple locations, absolutely, or they have in-house people.
They have in-house people. The larger ones, they eat it up. They love it because they have all this stuff anyway.
Yeah, it's a pain.
And now they can put it in. But it's the smaller ones that struggle a little bit. And from an agency perspective, which are exactly what you're talking about, when we white label with agencies, we talk to the agencies about the fact that this is a real kind of value provider for them, right? Because they can say to their client, we will set up the system. We know about your brand. We will create the facts. We will set this up in such a way that it really reflects the voice that we've been trying to create. And so agencies love it because it gives them the tool that they don't have elsewhere. You can't, there's not that level of, granularity in other platforms.
Yep. And I think, like you said, if you're managing 3 to 5, maybe even 10 locations, you can do that manually. It's still not, cumbersome. But once you start, 220 is like,
it's a lot.
Yep. So how are you convincing these clients that it's a conversion engine? Like, how are you doing that positioning, and why did you choose to go with that positioning?
Yeah, well, we show them. We actually, when we have a free trial, so people will sign up, and then later they'll schedule a call. And so, they're in the system, and we'll just show them. We'll build a fact based on a review that they have. We'll show them how it integrates, and we'll say, if you were a reader looking at this and you read this response, how would that make you feel?
Right.
And when they see it and they think about it that way, that gets them, that's when they see the potential. And the same thing is true about review requests. Everyone gets so many review requests now, and they're not personalized. Well, imagine if you could personalize your review requests. You know a lot about your customers. You know how long, in some businesses, whether they've been a repeat customer, what project, you know a lot of things about them.
Yes.
And to the extent that you can weave that into the request,
yes,
it connects with that customer. It gives them a psychological reason to respond.
It feels human.
That's
because
right.
only a human, only an account rep that reviewed the account goes, oh, I've noticed that this is your fifth order with us. We're so happy, blah blah blah, if you wouldn't mind leaving a review. And so
Yeah,
you guys program like a to send an email, or how do you guys handle the review request aspect of it?
yeah. So, it can be through an integration with a CRM system. It can be an upload. It can be just manual entry for small businesses. But it's the same thing. We build, or they build. It's we have kind of our agents running in the background, but they write what they want that request to integrate. Like, what are these fields that are coming in, and how should they be used? And then the system just generates these very highly personalized requests. They can include photos,
Yeah,
right?
I love it.
Think
You
about
guys are
home
like,
services. Yeah,
you guys are coming up with rules, and like if then, and then letting it run with the magic of AI.
right. Exactly.
Awesome. All right. So we briefly mentioned something that, I said, oh, you optimize it for Chat GPT. And then you said, absolutely 100%. And then I thought, oh, I bet my listeners would love to hear more about that, because a lot of requests, well, we're already working on it for our clients, like proactively. But I've already kind of heard commentary from some clients are like, how do we make sure that we're showing up for Chat GPT, and they're in those answers? Because there's this big movement now of like zero click. Do you know about that? Of the zero click? Can you talk about that?
Well, when you say zero click, you mean people going into like to Google and they're just getting the answer from the AI
Yes, and they're
search. Yeah.
also they're also as instead of I started doing it a long time ago where I wasn't even going into Google anymore. I was just asking ChatGPT questions. And we're watching website stats and tank. And it's not that the content in there is not valuable. It's just that AI is really, pulling in and aggregating the data. Um, and so a lot of people are asking, how can you optimize your website to show up for Chat GPT when somebody says, I'm looking for a nearby office furniture dealer, recommend whatever. Like, how do you how can I leverage AI to handle my Google responses? How did you guys program what to be able to show up for that? And if you don't know, you can tell me you don't know. I understand you
Yeah.
have a
I
team of
mean,
programmers.
yeah, part of it is nobody really knows how these language models are building their own algorithms
Hmm.
around this. But a lot of it is around what people ask, so um, the question that you ask ChatGPT is typically longer
Hmm.
than the question that you ask Google. Kind of,
Hmm.
it's you tell it more, and so it has more information to go on when it's synthesizing all the information around it. So one of the things that we started doing is every single blog post has lots of questions.
Hmm.
It's written in a question format because that's what people are asking ChatGPT.
Hmm.
And and since our specialty is really around AI, we do that extensively in the AI review space. And so we have more, we've built that competitive advantage in ChatGPT in that area.
And you mentioned earlier that you were one of the first movers. Do you have competitors or similar software? Or are you still is the landscape kind of barren?
It's there's one company out in Europe called Maris Solutions. They're doing very similar things,
Mhm.
building facts into responses and things like that. They're the only one that I've seen other than us
Yeah.
that that is kind of tackling this idea of relevancy,
Mhm.
of facts about the business and building it into responses. Uh, I think you know Bird Eye is starting to do that. Bird Eye is one of the big
Mhm.
players in the space.
Yep.
Fabulously expensive.
Yeah.
So, in order to get these features, you have to spend a ton of money. Um, but they're doing it by kind of this notion of uploading documents,
Hmm.
like a RAG type system, where they're uploading documents and then they're letting the AI figure out what might be relevant. I just think that's so much harder.
Hmm.
I think the probability of
AI
success doing it
doesn't
that
think
way
and
is,
understand. And I think people don't a lot. I hear sometimes people talk about ChatGPT and I'm just sitting, I don't say anything because I'm not entrenched enough about it to like, educate anybody, like, sit there and lecture them. But I do know enough to know that it does not understand. It does not it's just it's tokens and calculating the likelihood that one word's going to be next to the other. And
yeah. So think about a review without text. Great example. When we first started, we didn't do anything special for reviews that were rating only. And I got a call from one of our customers and he said, you got to do better because all my responses are sounding the same. And so I went and I looked at it. He had a lot of reviews that were rating only and it was saying the same thing. And so I started thinking, talking to my team and different people. And the problem is that when AI has nothing to go on, it looks at the most likely set of words that should be next to each other. And those are often going to be the same thing. Thank you for your kind words, right? Like you said, that's out there so much that thank you for your kind words is a very common. So just as an aside, we have we have a blacklist, and one of those blacklist items is thank you for your kind words.
That's why you didn't say anything because you were like, yeah, that's on our no list, but I'm not gonna insult her. So,
but what we do is we have a page where people can write in the kinds of things they like to say, right? Different phrases that they like. And then the AI randomly selects those phrases along with all of the other customizations. How do you want to greet the customer? How do you want to close? Do you want
dear
to include the
sir.
business name? All of these things. And it creates a really nice response. And because it's random and using AI, no two responses sound alike. So we had to actually intervene.
Yeah, and
For reviews
program
without
it
text because
to kind of rotate, off of these.
that's right.
I'm thinking about your team in India, and I think everybody has tinkered a little bit with hiring somebody abroad. Do you have any best practices or any advice or any kind of feedback? Because clearly you've done it successfully for many years.
Well, I mean, I got lucky. You know, I went through a couple of people when this is 15 years ago, and then I found a guy, and he was just a wonderful person, a great developer, had the capability of building a team, and we never looked back. So, you got to find that one person, and because you're not there, and you have to rely on someone, and so you have to find that one person, and then let them do their thing. And we just got lucky all those years ago.
You know, one of the biggest challenges that I've had and that I've just seen across the board, like, finding really good people to work with you. That's something that is, a whole different subset of conversation. You've obviously been in a lot of roles, including this one. And you said luck, and I'm just kind of sitting back going, because there is that luck component. Because I can't tell you how many times I've tried to make interviewing, recruiting, hiring formulaic, right? If this, then that, or if you notice this, then that's what this means. And I, for the life, I mean, you're way ahead of me. If there's any insight, please share. But it does sometimes feel like it is just dumb luck that you end up with the right person, or just unlucky, right? That you end up with the wrong person. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
You know, I've hired a lot of people over the years, and I don't know that I have a formula. I've hired people that I thought would be amazing, and they were duds, and vice versa. And so, I think you do the best. You do the best you can. You have to make sure the core skills are there, but the bigger part of it's personality
Mhm.
and fit. And you really don't understand that until they're there. And I think, the
Yes.
same problem is on the other side. You know, candidates go through these excruciating interview processes. And then they get into the job and they realize they don't like the culture.
Hmm.
And so, when you find something, when you find someone that fits, you really have to work at keeping them.
Yep. Agreed. Yep. Yeah, and it's comforting and frustrating at the same time to hear that luck component, but it's true. And in business as well, when you, I think, set off as an entrepreneur, there's definitely a bit of luck involved in, whether you make it or not. There's certainly a lot of skill sets that you can apply.
Yeah, a lot of it's luck. It really is. When we were in the when I first got involved with the audiology business, COVID happened.
Oh,
We
wow.
we had to shut down 220 clinics and then reopen them. And so, there's skill and then there's the things that happen that you just can't plan for. And where the skill comes in is how do you handle those, unknown situations?
Yes. Yep. And what are your best practices for walking into these unknown, uncontrollable situations?
Data, lots and lots and lots of data. So, for example, at this particular company, we decided to use the COVID shutdown as an opportunity to understand which clinics we didn't want to reopen.
Hmm.
Right? So we went through a very careful analysis about the competitive markets and the financials and our prospects for success, because why reopen a clinic that we didn't feel, right? So when we came out of COVID, we ended up with higher profitability because we had taken the opportunity to not reopen some clinics that were marginal that we didn't think we could fix.
Yeah. And isn't that the case that like every day you're always kind of stuck, I think, in the undertow of just the day-to-day operations, and you don't actually ever get a chance to like take a breather and stop and actually look at exactly what you said COVID finally gave you the chance to do, which I think more people should carve out more time for that. More leaders to really just take a step back and really look at what are the top performing products or services that we have, what are the top performing locations that we have, like, there, because it's important work, but it always kind of gets like, okay, well, maybe, later.
I have another idea for you. When I was CEO of this business, I would allocate 4 hours a week to just talk with anybody. So
Anybody.
if I got an email and someone was pitching something and I thought, maybe there's something there, I would give that person 20 minutes. I would call people, in Europe that were doing interesting things. I would email them and say, hey, I read about this that you're doing. I'd just like to talk to you. Maybe there's something, maybe there's not. And so, you have to be out in the world,
Hmm.
right? You have to be out. If you think you have all the answers, you will never build your business. You will never excel. You have to recognize it's a big world. There's a lot of people out there smarter than you, and your job is to find them and do better through other people. And so, like you said, you have to carve time out to do different things. Part of it is stepping back, thinking about the business. I found that stepping out and talking to people, doing different things, sometimes I would approach them, sometimes they would approach me, led to a lot of great opportunities.
Agreed. Well, I mean, I what a beautiful way to close on that note of wisdom. I certainly appreciate your time and insight sharing your journey of creating Right Response AI, which is such an innovative and, like you said, kind of disruptive uh, idea. I admire your boldness in saying, I'm going to, develop it, bring it to market, and, offer it. It's great that you guys white label with agencies as agencies. Sometimes like to say that we're the primary care doctor for the business on the marketing end, where we're looking at the entire organism. I hire like specialists, like so people that only do websites, people that only do graphic design, and I kind of lasso them together for the benefit of the client. And we're also looking for partners that can help us bring more value to our clients. And a lot of the work that we do is taking meetings with people like you or any other vendor that approaches periodically. We'll meet with them just to see what they have. And then if it's good, we bubble it up to the client. And so, like you said, we do live in a very complex world and we definitely need each other. And I'm just so grateful for the time you shared with us. How can people get in touch with you, connect with you, follow you?
So our website is rightresponseai.com. And there's the ability to schedule a call. You just go right there and schedule a call. And if you say, I want to speak with George on this call in the notes, then it'll be me on the call. Or people can just reach out to me directly, G Swetlitz. I'm on the website on our team page, G Swetlitz at rightresponseai.com, or through LinkedIn, either through RightResponse or me personally.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, George. It was such a pleasure to have you on the Create Brand Envy podcast.
Yeah, it was great to be here. It was a very, very interesting conversation. Thank you.